Hello once again, and Tony here with a review of Verdi's Aida, which was shown at the Deutsche Oper Berlin, and this also marks its fifth performance since its premiere on November 22 of this year. Well, premiere of the new production, of course. The conductor was Andrea Battistoni. The production was by Benedikt von Peter. The assistant director was Eva Maria Abelein. The set design was handled by Katrin Wittig. The costumes were done by Lena Schwind. The videography was done by Bert Zander. The chorus master was William Spalding. The lights were done by Ulrich Niepel. And the dramaturgy was handled by Dorothea Hartmann. Now, I'm not going to go too much into detail of why I really love Verdi's Aida, because I've already stated that in my review of the other production that was shown in the Arena di Verona. But for those of you who haven't really watched it, or for those of you who really need a sort of refreshment, then let me just say that Verdi's Aida is definitely one of my most favorite Verdi operas of all time, and it's also one of my most favorite Italian operas of all time. Its well-known number is basically the Triumphal March, yet it also has a lot of other pieces of music that I deeply adore, like the fabulous tenor aria Celeste Aida, and then the trios between Radames, Amneris, and Aida, and of course the duet or the confrontation scene between Amneris and Aida, Fu la sorte dell'armi, and the scene of consecration with Ramphis and Radames, Mortal Adeletto Numi, and of course my ultimate favorite or favorites, the Triumphal March before the end of the act, Aida's two arias, and of course the judgment scene and the final duet. So this opera really has had a very special place in my heart. So let's get on to what I thought about the production. Now, usually in a production of Aida, I really expect a lot. I expect a lot of scenery, a lot of fanfare, a lot of fancy stuff happening just to make the scenery burst with life and color and a great amount of beauty and glory, so to say. With this production, I just didn't really care too much of it. It was blank. It was dark all around, but at least it was still well lit. And throughout the whole opera, there is like this screen where we see some books of, German guidebooks relating to Egypt and history books relating to Egypt and Egyptian history. And I guess you could say it does add a little bit to this production, but it didn't really do too much for me. What's also worth mentioning is that we mostly see Aida, Radames, and Amneris on stage. Basically, what this concept of this opera is trying to tell is that this is mainly focusing on the love triangle aspect of Radames, Amneris, and Aida. As in, we really get to see what type of turmoils do they have. We always see that Amneris and Radames basically live like a bickering married couple, and Aida is the third wheel. And that also explains why we don't see Ramphis, the king of Egypt, Amonasro, the messenger, and the high priestess on stage. Basically, I really would have loved these characters to also be on stage as well, as they also help with the drama and how the plot thickens and develops. But it's rather much a shame because, we also had some very fine singers for these roles, but they weren't really seen on stage, which is a huge pity. I really would have loved to see a lot of a lot more character interaction between all of these different characters and not just the three tragic heroes. I really would have loved to see a lot more character interaction. And I know this might seem like a little bit of a nitpick, but why is there, well, German sausage and why are there like German food on a production of Aida? I guess if I probably would have had it in my own way, I probably would have just also included a lot more Middle Eastern delicacies, like, let's say, some dates or grapes, red wine, well, goat cheese, goat's milk. A lot of those Middle Eastern delicacies probably would have fitted a lot more nicely into a production of Aida. But it's very easy to say that even though I don't like the production so much, I have to say that Aida's costume was actually quite elegant. I didn't really care too much for Radames's and Amneris's costume. Radames's costume was mainly like all blackish gray, whereas Amneris is just basically in a plain blue dress. But what's the hugest highlight of this production was that as I was sitting the on the seat area in which you could have a bird's eye view of the opera stage, there was the men's chorus right behind me for the judgment scene with Rampus somewhere in the other seats. And let me just tell you, I love the judgment scene to death. It is by far the most memorable piece of music in Aida. And I am so full of anticipation every time this scene is there. And to have the men's chorus right behind me and right behind, well, not just me, but also behind a lot of people who were sitting at this row was just so thrilling, so surreal that I just felt a lot more excited and a lot more anticipated. And I just had a huge grin on my face. That's just how excited I was, especially for that scene. So overall, I didn't really care too much of the production. As an Aida production, I really expected a lot more. I really wanted a lot more scenery, a lot more color, a lot more vibrancy, just a lot more beauty and a lot more scenery, so to say. I just wanted a lot more. Well, because a lot of traditional Aida productions usually call for a lot of, well, scene porn, so to say, where everything looks fabulous, everything looks so vibrant and authentic and clean and just so luscious to look at that you can't seem to take your eyes off of this production. But as of the production for today, I just wasn't too fond of it. It was kind of lacking a little bit in color, and I felt like some of the direction went a little bit all over the place. Like the duet mainly with Amneris and Aida. I mean, Radames should not have been in that freaking duet because it was just safe for them. And I really would have also loved to see a lot of chorus members on stage, especially for Amneris's little scene, which is the Vieni, Vieni, Amor Mio. And the dance of the little Moors was replaced by a sort of cat and mouse game with Amneris and Radames. So there were some pretty good things about the production, but they were sort of marred by how disinterested I felt for this particular production, as I really wanted a lot more in terms of a production of Aida. So not really a great production, but at least it had a few good elements, not to mention the men's chorus, who were behind me, I felt was just the hugest highlight of this production. It was just a huge highlight. And also the ending in which Amneris stabs herself, I thought was pretty poignant as well. as if to say that it's not just Aida and Radames that are going to die, she's going to die along with them. So yeah, it overall, like I said, I didn't really care too much of the production, but at least it had just a few good things to it. But even though I don't care about the production, that doesn't mean I don't care about the singers. In fact, I felt like every single one of these singers put just a lot of effort and beauty into each of their parts that they sang. So let's start off with our title heroine, Aida, who was sung by Tatiana Serian. Now, for those of you who don't know, Aida really needs a marathon role of a soprano. It's a marathon for a soprano to sing. She has to sing very dramatically and very lyrically, yet also has to have some high notes as well. And also, not to mention, if she even has it, a high E flat that, for some reason, some sopranos would usually interpolate at the triumphal scene. It has to be sung by a spinto soprano who can sing very dramatically, yet at the same time very lyrically, but also has to have some really great high notes. It's not just high Bs or high Cs, but to some extent maybe a high E flat during the triumphal scene. With Tatiana Serian as Aida, I felt like she was the star of the evening. She really poured her heart out into this role. She was able to make Aida such a character. She was able to make her such a suffering character, and we felt totally sorry for her. We felt sorry for her of what she had to go through. We felt sorry for her of what she had to keep enduring. And not to mention, she has a very fine technique, which is no surprise because I have a lot of favorite Aidas, namely Maria Callas, Leonie Rizanek, Leontine Price, Maria Chiara, Aprile Milo, Marissa Galvani, and Dimitra Teodosiou, and Adelaida Negri. She really does her role justice very well, and when she sings her pianissimos, they're just so heavenly and so gorgeous to listen to that I felt like my ears were just in heaven after she sings her lines very beautifully. Her two arias were sung with such finesse, agility, and grace, and her stage presence was just so endearing. She totally looked like an angel and a dancer in that dress. She looked absolutely fabulous, and she was just in fine form in terms of acting and in terms of singing. She really held it on her own so well that she was able to really capture my heart, soul, and mind. Singing the role of our main hero, Radames, was the Korean spinto tenor, Alfred Kim. Now, I don't really know that much of Alfred Kim, as I've only heard a couple of snippets of his singing on YouTube. First of him singing Di Quella Pira from Il Trovatore, and of course, Matinata by Leoncavallo. I thought he has a very fine voice. And, well, with this gentleman, he has to be in really fine form to sing such a role. And he was. Granted, he kind of does fall a little bit short because I also have my personal preferences for Radames's. Usually I want a great singer to do Radames. Any singer like John Vickers, Laurits Melchior, Placido Domingo, or Christian Johansson, Mario del Monaco, Franco Corelli, and Franco Bonisoli, and even Luciano Pavarotti, which is no surprise because I always love a great Helden tenor who could sing the role of Radames, especially with his aria Celeste Aida. Now, like I said before, the role of Radames doesn't just need a Helden tenor with a strong voice. He needs a very, very just wonderful dramatic tenor who can be able to sing those notes really well, and especially sing that B flat in a diminuendo style. A lot of tenors who sing Celeste Aida would usually blast the final B flat, whereas with some tenors they would usually be more diminuendo on the B flat. With Alfred Kim, he was able to sing his role really well. Granted, he's not like one of the greats like Melchior or Domingo or Del Monaco or Bergonzi or Corelli or Pavarotti, but he's still his own tenor. He does a very good job in his role, but I also felt like he was a little bit of mannerisms with his acting. I felt like there were times he wasn't a little bit too involved in the scene, but I don't really know if it's the mistake of the director or if he wasn't really directed too well, but I felt like there were times in which he was kind of out from the scene. But still, he was able to keep his focus all together and really get it all together within him, and he does a very fine job with singing the role and really portraying the role of Radames pretty well. Seeing the role of Aida's rival alongside Radames's other love interest, Amneris, is the young Russian dramatic mezzo-soprano Anna Smirnova. Now, Anna Smirnova is a dramatic mezzo slash soprano that I've been hearing many times, especially mostly on YouTube. I also read a lot on her repertoire, and I have to say that it's quite impressive of what she's been singing. I mean, she has been singing not only the dramatic mezzo parts of Azucena, Amneris, and Eboli, but she's also sung some soprano parts recently, like Lady Macbeth, and Gioconda, and Abigail, for example. Heck, I think she also did Isolde's Liebestod live, but I don't know if there's any YouTube or any recording of her doing that. I think it's stated that she did sing some arias from Tristan und Isolde, mainly Isolde, and she also did sing Santuzza as well. And I have to say that hearing Anna Smirnova live was just absolutely fabulous. I'm actually really blessed to have seen such a very fine talent like Miss Smirnova sing live. Now, Amneris is definitely a part that's also quite a Mount Everest role, not only for a lot of dramatic mezzos, but a lot of Wagnerian and dramatic sopranos even flock to sing Amneris as well. Well, while a lot of spinto and dramatic sopranos flock to sing Aida, a lot of dramatic mezzos and Wagnerian sopranos would also flock to sing Amneris, because I guess when you think about it, Amneris is definitely a character who really has to have a lot of great acting chops and also is pretty much a show stealer when you think about it. Now, I have a catalog of favorite Amnerises, the likes of Ebe Stignani, Giulietta Simeonato, Rita Gore, Irene Dalis, Crystal Ludwig, Fiorenza Cosotto, who's that? Shirley Verrett, Grace Bumbry, Mirella Paruto, Agnes Balza, Sigrid Kehl, Gisela Schröter, Astrid Varnay, and even most recent, and also the likes of Gina Dimitrova, Giovanna Casolla, and also Isolde Elschlip, and Elizabeth Connell as well. And most recently, the likes of Dolores Zajic and Marion Cornetti and Susan McLean, Mona Zom, and Brigitte Pinter as well. There has been no shortage of mezzo-sopranos and sopranos who flocked to sing this very iconic character. And I felt that Anna Smirnova was able to do her role really well, and she acted really well on stage. She was very much involved in the drama, though at times there were parts of her that were mannerisms here and there, but regardless, she was able to be very convincing as this really jealous and clingy princess. She was able to really, really hold her own and really, really put herself in a position where she can be able to sing her judgment scene very well with the help of the chorus and the orchestra. I felt she was able to really pull herself together in this very iconic role really well. Then we have Ramphis, who was sung by a young basso by the name of Alexei Botnarchuk, who is hailing all the way from Moldavia. And I also heard him this morning on YouTube singing Grimmen's aria, and I thought he did a very fine job. With hearing him as Ramphis, I thought he was just so excellent, and he is also just so immersed in this role in terms of his voice. Now, he has to basically contend with a lot of my favorite Ramphises of the past, the likes of Gottlob Frick, Nikolai Gyaurov, Cesare Siepi, Bonaldo Giotti, Pata Burkhaladze, Dmitry Kavrakos, Mati Zalmanen, and also Ivo Vinko, and also Jerome Hines, and many, many other fine basso cantantes and profondos who have sung this role and made this, thankless role their own. He was able to hold himself really well in this role and manages to have a sense of vocal presence and vocal energy that he gives in this role. Singing the role of the king, or Re dell'Egitto, is the fabulous basso profondo Ante Yerkunitsa, who I also saw last year as Alvise Badoero from La Gioconda. I really love him as a singer. He has a very fine vocal presence, and he has a very fine technique. And every time he opens his mouth, I feel like I'm just being glued to my seat because of this vocal presence, this imposing presence for such a thankless character. He was just able to make the role of the king his own, and he just captured my heart. Now, there's no doubt that I also like a lot of bassos in the role of the king, the likes of Italo Tayo, Fernando Corena, and Francesco Elero d'Artagnan. And with Yarkunitsa, he was able to sing his role very well, which is no surprise because the role of Ramphis and the king call for either basso cantantes or basso profondos who have very fine voices, who have very powerful and cavernous voices who can be able to have such a demanding presence on stage. Singing the role of Amonasro is Markus Bruck, who is very well known in this very opera house. He has a very fine voice, and it's no surprise that I definitely enjoy Markus Bruck as a singing actor, giving such a fine performance in this iconic Verdi baritone role with a very fine technique and such a very fine vocal presence. Now, like I said, I have a lot of favorite Amonasros, the likes of Gian Giacomo Guelfi, Matteo Mannoguera, Tito Gobbi, Anselmo Colzani, and let's see, and Johannes von Duisburg, and many, many other fine Verdi baritones, and even the great Cheryl Milnes and Robert Merrill. So basically, what Amonasro needs is a fine, dramatic baritone voice who can be able to act really well and really be involved in the drama and have such a ferocity that few other baritones can compare. With Markus Bruck, he was able to be immersed in this very iconic Verdi baritone role. And then we have the minor roles of the messenger and the priestess, sung by Alvaro Zambrano and Adriana Ferfecca. Zambrano sings fine as always, but with Adriana Ferfecca, she is definitely a new name, and she's a very young artist, and she has a very fine and very gorgeous voice. So the singing all around is just pure excellence. And the conducting done by Maestro Andrea Battistoni and also the chorus, they all worked very, very well with each other. I have to say that the men's chorus especially was just the huge highlight of the evening for me, especially in the judgment scene. So overall, the production may have been but the singing was absolutely amazing. If you're not going to see this production of Aida because of the production, then you might as well see it because of the very fabulous singing. Well, that's all for now. Be sure to tune in for another review. So until then, good night, everybody.